want to thank John Parenteau and Sara Dietschy for joining us today to talk all things Blackmagic ProDock.
The cool thing about all of this is it kind of started with the iPhone and the Blackmagic app, which I don't know that a lot of people know about. So the nice thing is that it's basically the same software that we run on all our cameras. So you can control everything. You control your exposure. You can have all those tools. It's really wonderful. So that's kind of where it started, which is great. But then they kind of went to the next level by putting out the ProDock. You want to talk a little bit about your rig there, Sara?
So I have an entire YouTube video about this where I went pretty crazy on a lot of different configurations, but I do a lot of different types of content. So YouTube videos, and also used to do podcasts. And for a while I actually used Blackmagic cameras, but I still to this day use the Blackmagic 8M switcher for my teleprompter setup and my YouTube setup. So I'm like very ingrained in the Blackmagic system, but this was super cool when the ProDock came out because it basically allows you to extend your iPhone into a setup that is really great with other cameras. So say if you're starting a podcast setup, you maybe only have one camera, you want a second angle, you kind of add this dock with your iPhone and you get a lot of cool functionality. So there is an HDMI, there's 3 USB-Cs. You can, the out-of-the-box way to power the ProDock is you just put it into a wall outlet, right? There's a power here, plug it into the wall, which would be great for a podcast setup. But I was like, how do we make a setup that's like portable?
The one thing about the ProDock is it traditionally was designed as a way to sort of create a studio camera out of your iPhone. But a lot of people were like, well, what if I want to go on location? And so this is what you have.
Yeah, and so what you need in order to do that is one, a cage. So Beast Cage has a great one, and there's other brands that do it. But this is kind of like the special sauce, where it's a small rig, 12-volt adapter, and it's just a normal NPF monitor battery. So if you have, different monitors like this, the battery that goes in the back, you just pop that in there and then you get a lot of great outputs. So this allows me to not just power the dock down here, but you can, again, plug in a monitor. And if your monitor is enabled, if you can power the monitor via USB-C, you can plug it in here. So this powers the entire system. And the dock itself plugs into your iPhone just via one USB-C cable, if you can see that. And so the moment you plug in the dock via that one USB-C, your iPhone automatically has the ability to have audio inputs, all of these different USB-C inputs, and then HDMI to monitor it. And then the special sauce is the Genlock and timecode. John, you can probably go into why Genlock and timecode is special. I'm sure a lot of you guys are familiar with timecode, but when I was doing a video on this, I had to actually learn a little bit more about Genlock and how it's used in professional environments, because I've used timecode plenty of times to, essentially jam sync a lot of different audio to make it sync up better in post. But Genlock is something that in more professional environments like newsrooms and things and, live streaming environments that they use. John, if you want to talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so the Genlock is the production version of timecode. So timecode's great in post because you can use it to sync things. Genlock will allow you to keep things in sync when you're shooting. And where that comes into play is if you have multiple cameras that are doing, like a long podcast, things like that, they'll tend to wander. The sync will tend to wander because of that. So Genlock is very helpful for that. It's not critical if you're just doing, something smaller and not terribly long, then you don't really need to worry about that, and that'll be fine. But it's the longer pieces. If you're doing an hour long or whatever podcast and you want to make sure everything stays in perfect sync, that's a great way to do it. And you just need a little Genlock generator. They make these little tiny things and they just plug into the various devices and it keeps it all in sync. So it's kind of a production version of that. The one thing I like about your solution there is that, as a production person, you go out in this setting and, okay, so I don't know how much that costs. I know the ProDock is like $300 or something like that. So you already have an iPhone. So you just buy a ProDock and suddenly now with a battery adapter, which I'm sure isn't very expensive, you have a very high quality camera to go shoot almost anything with. And remember, 28 years later was shot with an iPhone and with Blackmagic Camera app too. So it's not like an amateur solution. But the other thing I always like to point out is that if you're trying to do something multicam and you can't afford or can't and don't have access to a bunch of different cameras, that inevitably, if they're different brands and things, are going to be mismatching and such. If you have a couple friends with iPhones, you can get a couple ProDocs, and now you suddenly have a multicam, high quality multicam capability. So that's the kind of thing I like about it. But your rig is nice because you can go out on location, you can put a monitor, video village out, you can put professional microphones into it. It suddenly becomes this kind of cinema camera without having to spend $20,000 for a cinema camera. So that's kind of the big thing we like about it. Sarah, what have you shot with your setup?
Yeah, so right after I actually made that video about the ProDock, I had some content that I needed to film in Austin. It was Grand Prix weekend. I was working with McLaren, and I wasn't shooting a YouTube video for
Very jealous, by the way. I hate you for
Yes, it was like a dream opportunity. And so it was just a lot of social content. And so I did use my classic camera setups, but they wanted all vertical assets. But I was previously burned on a previous job that I won't talk about, where I filmed everything vertical, and then they came back and said, "Hey, actually, we need a horizontal cut for X." And I was like, "Cool, I didn't film it horizontal. I did completely vertical." And, I panicked a little bit, and I was like, "Oh, everyone's talking about AI. Can I just do, like, Gen Fill on the sides, to make up for it?" That tech is not there yet. And so I literally spent the next day refilming shot for shot the entire campaign. And so after that, I literally was like, I will never film just vertical ever again. And so whenever I'm filming iPhone, or even with my other rigs, whether it's Blackmagic cams or Sony cams, I'm always filming horizontal, but I will have a monitor on top of my rig, and I will have those guides up, right? So I know what I'm framing for 16 by 9, 9 by 16. But I have the possibility, if I need to, after the fact, to do a horizontal cut. And so I actually brought this rig, and that's what was so cool about it. And that's where kind of the Blackmagic Cam app comes into play. Let me show you guys. I'm going to pull up some of the different grids it has. So basically what I would do is I would monitor horizontal down on my iPhone, and then I have a monitor, mounted up on top to monitor the vertical. And then all of a sudden I feel like, it's like a professional setup, but it's still very small. It's still very nimble. My husband was filming, so I didn't have to worry about, I had an ND filter on it just because iPhone, you can't stop down. But I didn't have to worry about any settings or anything. Everything else was auto and Blackmagic Cam app. So all I really had to do is just like point and shoot. And I think that's where the iPhone with the Blackmagic Cam app can kind of be best of both worlds, where you have a professional look because you can shoot an Apple log, and when you go and grade it in post, it looks fantastic. It looks like professional footage. But when you're actually shooting it, you have the ease of like shooting with the iPhone. So that was like a fun job that I used it for.
One of the questions I was going to ask you, which we'll get back to once you've done showing what you're trying to set up now, is shooting in RAW on the iPhone. Have you done that, I assume?
With the recent iPhone update, it is cool because you can shoot in ProRes RAW. And you can shoot open gate, which is fun. But I do not do that because the file sizes are huge. You have to record to an external SSD. This setup allows for that. Instead of a monitor, I would just put an SSD at the top. And then that's where the extra USB-C ports at the bottom of this dock come in handy, because you would plug it into one of those USB-Cs. For me personally, with social content, I don't want file sizes that are like 100 gigs for a few minutes if I'm posting it to Instagram, but I always shoot an Apple log. I think the biggest thing that people miss out on when shooting with iPhone is not turning it over to Apple log. People say, it still looks like iPhone footage. I need a real camera. Try Apple log. Apple has like a basic LUT that you can throw over it that does the conversion to Rec 709, and it blends in beautifully with all of my other real cameras. So Apple Log was introduced with iPhone 15, so it's been around for a couple of years. But Blackmagic is the best. Sounds like I've worked with you guys in the past, but this isn't sponsored. But literally, the
I work for Blackmagic. You don't.
yeah, about that. I don't. So hopefully, me saying this, throw some credibility on them because it's literally the best place, the Blackmagic Cam app, to record an Apple Log because you can do the H.265 setting where you're saving space, but you're still getting a lot of that great color and all the information that comes with shooting in log. So shooting Apple Log, H.265, 422 10-bit. That's where all the magic happens.
If we plug the USB-C into the dock, can we also connect the external SSD to record onto for space reasons?
Yes. Yeah. So the cool thing is that one USB-C that you're plugging the dock into the iPhone, that enables you to everything that you connect down here is going to be connected to your iPhone. So
The USB-C, just Sarah, show the end of it where the USB-C that plugs into the phone is actually hardwired into the ProDock. So that leaves all your other ports available
so that
on the other side.
goes to your iPhone. And then here are all of the USB-Cs. So you have three. I believe it's two. Yeah, two of the USB-Cs are 3.2, and then you have one USB 2.0. So you need to plug in your SSD to the 3.2 USB-Cs for that speed. And then the USB 2 is good for like powering something. So or like plugging in an audio accessory or something like that. So you have two high-speed USB-Cs, which are great for that, for the SSD.
And then there's micro stereo mini inputs, right? And is that for the audio?
Yes. Audio. And it's the 3.5 mil. If you guys are curious just for the settings to try out, so Kodak, Blackmagic Cam app, you can just it's free, right, John? I've used it for some
the Blackmagic Camera app is free. Yeah, it's free.
It's free. So
and the best thing to do, Susan, is to go to Sarah's web page or YouTube page, and she has a whole video about the setup, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, so I have an entire video about the setup, but maybe a year ago now, I did an entire video about shooting an Apple Log as well. And I actually go through, I think the title of the video is like the only iPhone new feature that matters or something. I try to package it in a way where, because no one clicks on a video that's like, why you should shoot an Apple Log, because a lot of people really aren't familiar with it. But the best settings, if you just download the Blackmagic Cam app, you basically go to record, Kodak, make sure you have selected H.265. So that's that first setting right there. So H.265. And then resolution 4K. And then color space, you want to select Apple Log 2 HDR. And with those two settings, you're going to be golden. There are, when it comes to LUTs, a lot of people like to sell you their LUTs, but having a LUT is great to load up on your iPhone to monitor it so you know kind of the color that you're shooting, but it's not entirely necessary. If you're editing in DaVinci Resolve, and I cover this in my video, you don't have to use a LUT because you're shooting in log. Resolve is going to do the conversion for you. So there's a way to do that also in effects. You can just go to color transform and go through the steps of, I'm using Apple Log and I want to convert this to Rec 709. And then all of a sudden you have like a beautiful image, the colors come back, that conversion happens. And all of a sudden your iPhone looks like a professional camera. It really, it's like I know we're talking about the ProDock. ProDock is sick, obviously, as you've seen, but using the Blackmagic Cam app to shoot an Apple Log is like the biggest unlock when it comes to iPhone footage.
So Page asks sound, SSD, and Page, the and is a monitor. You can also include that. So you have, that would be probably your three main ones you'd use.
HDMI a monitor out is probably easier than you can. Somebody said they had USB audio. Their audio was USB-C, so that there's three of them. So you probably use the slower one for the audio because it doesn't need the high speed.
Slower for the audio, SSD for your cards, which is brilliant because that's the problem with the iPhone. And then the third one, what do you do, Sarah?
I've never used all 3 USB-Cs actually. If it was a podcast setup, I would not, I wouldn't have to worry about this battery. So I would have more places to mount things. In that case, I would probably use a monitor and then also an SSD. When you're going portable, you lose a little bit of room. However, what's so cool about this Beast Cage is you have one more 1/4 inch attachment right here. So I believe in the overkill setup in the video that I made, I had the monitor here and I had audio here. So you are able to usually have, 2 or 3 different things going depending. But if it's a podcast setup, I'd probably have like audio, monitor, and then an SSD. But I have a 1 terabyte iPhone. So a lot of the times I'm not prioritizing the SSD. I'm prioritizing a monitor, and then audio.
Why not just use your iPhone screen for your monitor? Is that where your LUT and everything comes in?
If you're shooting only horizontal, the iPhone screen is beautiful and you really don't have to worry about it. But usually it's to have a second view to see what the 9:16
Got it.
is. So I'll have like the horizontal on my iPhone and then the vertical with guides up top on the monitor, or vice versa. You can monitor the horizontal on the monitor and the vertical.
Well, you can put, Sarah, you can put guides through the Blackmagic Camera app on
Yeah.
the phone so that you can see what 9:16 is within that frame, right? So technically, you don't need a second monitor. If you don't.
Technically,
have one.
and a lot of times I just, even though it's not exactly, a lot of times, I don't know if y'all can tell, I'll just throw up like the rule of thirds grid. So there's a lot of different grids that you can have. Again, Blackmagic Cam app has so many different ways to monitor. It has zebras, it has false color, which is crazy because a lot of monitors don't even have false color.
Would you mind telling us exactly every piece of gear you're using there, what it's called, so they can go find it and buy it and duplicate your setup?
Let me do the easiest possible thing and send you guys the link to the YouTube video because all of the links are in the description of the video.
Rachel asked, so what's to confirm that Blackmagic app audio can also be monitored? You can also monitor audio through the Blackmagic app, correct?
There's one of the little stereo mini connections is actually of audio out. So you can monitor headphones through there. And that takes what comes through on the phone, or I imagine you can switch it, to whatever else you're using as an input.
The SDIs are also SDI out, not just for Genlock.
No, they're both in. One's Genlock in, one's timecode in. So there's no monitor out on the SDIs. That's what the HDMI is for.
Blackmagic, please work on your autofocus capabilities and get to Sony levels. It's important. Rachel is a DP who works a lot, and I know Blackmagic listens to their operators, so wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, I know I don't know specifically anything, but I know it's a constant progress. They're working on it constantly.
You guys
to
have
make it
really
better.
heard that for over a decade now.
Yeah, but it's out. I mean, we had a version. I used it on when it first came out. I used it on an interview setup with pro wrestlers, and as you know, pro wrestlers are like, and it tracked them really nicely. And that was just the first version. I've heard the new version is better. So it's a combination of, it's a combination of the software trying to figure out how to do it well, but it's also they map every lens they can, because every lens has different attributes for the autofocus. So that's also a process of figuring out, what lens, and whether they've mapped that correctly for the autofocus. So stick with us. It's getting better and better. I know that's a focus of the camera department, and just keep tabs on updates. Make sure your cameras are updated, because it's constantly changing. So for the better, hopefully.
So Sarah has put the video links so you guys can watch in detail after this. But Sarah, if you won't mind just pointing out each piece just so we can see.
And this is actually kind of bare bones for me, and I didn't include my monitor because it's not a Blackmagic Design monitor. I didn't know how strict you guys wanted to be. Yeah, I can talk about that monitor if you want me to.
That's okay. You can talk about the monitor.
Okay.
We realize other people in the world make gear too, so we're okay with that.
True. Yep. So of course, the heart of the setup is, the Blackmagic Design dock. But I would argue that this Beast Cage is like the best cage that you can get because it's a universal one. so you can understand what's happening. Let me unplug my iPhone real quick. Without my iPhone, you can now see how the iPhone goes in. It's not unique to my specific, iPhone 17. So you can fit a Max or a normal Pro, and it just clamps onto the phone in the center like that. And then you go over here and there's screws, and you basically can adjust the lens to go over here. And the entire point of this is I have a 37 mil adapter here for an ND filter. If you are shooting outside with iPhone, you have to have an ND filter because the f-stop is fixed. And so what that means is the Blackmagic Cam is great at automatically adjusting your settings if you are filming outside, but that means the only mechanism that your iPhone has is to crank the shutter. And so when the shutter's cranked, your footage is going to look there's not going to be any natural, nice motion blur, and it's going to seem wonky. No matter if you're shooting an Apple log, people are going to be like, that footage seems off. And so that's why it's also important to get the ND filter adapter. Again, this is all at Beast Cage. And so I'll show you guys how I connect and how the ProDock is connected on the bottom. It's just a simple 1/4 inch thread that's on the bottom of the cage, as you guys can see. And so that can go on the bottom of really any cage. I basically pop in the iPhone. So it just like clamps down on my iPhone, and then the ProDock USB-C plugs in. I know I'm not showing this very well, I'm sorry. And then you literally just adjust your iPhone horizontally and then vertically here. Line up the lens. You always want to shoot with that wide, not the ultra wide. And then now that USB-C is connected, you have, your iPhone has all of the connections of the ProDock, and then it's powered by this DC 12-volt cable. This is what I had to do the most digging on, is the power, just because it's like a specific type of voltage you need. This is a very specific cable. It's all linked in my video. But this is what enables you to take the power from the NPF monitor battery and power the dock. And then this is a small rig NPF 12-volt. All of these things have like very long names, but again, all of the specific links are in the video. And this gives you USB-C output and the 12-volt DC output. And that's what's very unique about this power adapter, whatever you want to call it. And then from there, you can add all of the different accessories. It depends on what you want. And so I'll do it here with the monitor. This is the Atomos Shinobi 2, but Blackmagic has a lot of great monitors as well. Why I like this is it's just super thin. So what's cool, again, about everything powering everything is this small rig power adapter has a USB-C out. So not only is this powering the dock and therefore powering my iPhone, it can also power the monitor. So I don't have to have a big NPF battery here. This battery powers everything. And so you can see a little light right there. So that's powering this monitor.
Sara, have you tried to connect the Pixis monitor to that setup?
I haven't. And that is just because I don't have one, but you can send me one.
Okay, maybe I'll send you one. I'd be curious. It works at that.
Yeah, it probably will. And then that's where that HDMI comes into play. So you would plug the HDMI cable into your ProDock, and then the other side into the monitor. I grabbed a micro HDMI, so fail train. But you would plug, one HDMI into the other side, and you have a really cool setup that's all powered by this one battery. So this small rig accessory, and I've used it on other setups too, is basically just a way to, a lot of people use V-mount battery setups to power their whole rigs. And I saw other iPhone setups with that, but the point of iPhone, at least for me, is to keep it like small and nimble. I don't like turning my iPhone setup into a rig that just resembles a real camera rig, because then you kind of lose the point of an iPhone setup. So using NPF batteries instead of V-mount is kind of like the core of how you keep that setup small. Yeah, and in that video, I show 3 different levels too. If you guys want, say you want to use it for a podcast setup and you don't care about portable battery, I show different rigs that you can do that with to keep it small and nimble. One other accessory I forgot to mention, this is another Beast Cage arm. This is just a NATO rail, and they have a handle that you can attach to this NATO rail. But because I wanted to keep it small, I just use the actual rail as a handle, and that's good for me. But they have so many different accessories. I'm a big fan of Beast Cage. They're not as popular in the creator community. A lot of YouTubers and stuff use like Elgato and Rode, but Beast Cage definitely, I think they're aiming more towards the professional crowd. So they're a little bit more expensive, but totally worth it.
Could you tell us just quickly, because a lot of the people who are going to pretty much follow your lead on building this out, do you have a certain level of ND or brand that you recommend? And also we're being asked about like what audio mic system do you use to keep it small?
Yeah, so for ND, I'm a big fan of just Tiffin variable NDs. Polar Pro has nice NDs, but they're so expensive. So I think they're good if you want some of the cool mist filter, like the extra sprinkle of stuff. But Tiffin has some really great variable NDs. And I believe if I didn't link that in the video, let me know. I believe I linked, I might have linked a Polar Pro. So Polar Pro and Tiffin. Again, but Polar Pro is a little bit more expensive because you're kind of paying for the names and collabs of people. And then in terms of you said audio? Yeah. And I saw some questions. So this is the Atomos Shinobi, but it's the Shinobi 2. What's unique about that is they have the specific vertical guidelines to where when you're shooting, it'll kind of darken the rest of the image and it'll really highlight the 9:16. My biggest gripe with their monitors is they say they're going to do firmware updates and then they just like don't. So the Shinobi 1 literally doesn't have a 9:16 guide. So you just can't do it with that first one, which is insane. And the other key is you can power this by USB-C. So that's why I do want to highlight that it's the second one and it's very thin. So you're kind of doing the gamble of like, oh, if there's like another great monitor feature in a couple years, they're probably not going to update it. You're probably going to have to buy another monitor. So I guess that's the gamble you're taking, but right now it's a great monitor. Audio, I'm a big fan of DJI Lavs. Sometimes they're kind of hard to find because you don't know what's happening with America and tariffs. The current administration does not like DJI. But filmmakers and YouTubers love the product. So I'm a big fan of their lav system. So I use their portable lav system all the time. Rode has a comparable system. I've just had more DJI. It kind of just is plug and play. It just works. Rode, I'm a big fan of like their microphones. I'm using a Rode microphone right now. And I love the Rodecaster for podcast setups. But when it comes to wireless lav systems, I'm a big fan of DJI. A Step Up, which sure has a more professional system that can go for longer distance. But DJI, I'm just like a big fan of the plug and play. And it's affordable. It's around $300. Now they have the Pro versions that has a 32-bit float. So you don't have to worry about audio clipping, and that's great. I don't even have those, but that's crazy value. So you don't really have to worry about, are your levels set right? You just put it, you just crank it, and you're going to be fine. You're basically never going to have clipping audio. The one thing I would watch, though, is they just released a new micro audio system, and those smaller receivers and transceivers, the the transceiver doesn't have a mic in to where you can connect an actual lav mic. I hate the trend of people just wearing the big chunks on their shirt. I know that's like kind of a thing that people are just doing because it's easy, but I'm a big fan of like connecting an actual lav mic, putting it down my shirt. So it's just a little mic. So it's great if you just want like run and gun audio, you're just making IG reels, but if you want it in a professional setup and you want to use the accessories to like even hide it underneath shirts, you're going to have to go with the Pro system or the DJI 2. That's what I have.
I can suck at that. We've been using the DJI too, like super fast. Just clip it on, go. And it records into your phone and to the actual mic, so you have backup, which is great.
That's a great point. Is the internal recording. I use the internal recording all the time. Sometimes if I'm lazy and I don't even have, like, I won't even set up the receiver on my camera. I'll just like record internally and line it up in post.
What is your battery life like when you're in the field? How long will it last?
Yeah, for when I was shooting the McLaren stuff, I mean, I had a bigger NPF battery on, so I had like the big boy. I didn't have to change it once. And that was like on and off shooting for like 4 hours. And so that powered the monitor and the ProDock and my iPhone. And that was great. So I haven't really hit a limit. I'm sure if I use this like smaller one, I would have to change it 1 or 2 times. It just depends how heavy you want your setup. And that's what's great about NPF batteries is they have so many different sizes. And they're just cheap. I have so many because I've been using them for several different things throughout the years.
This is really good timing. I'm shooting a documentary on women in magic, and I have a big magic convention in the UK in a few weeks. And I was going to bring my Osmo Pocket 3, but now I can just bring my iPhone. So I didn't know it had all this stuff available. So do you have a list of like just a basic setups and basic settings somewhere? I know you sent the link to your.
Yeah,
just because if I'm doing run and gun, I just want to be ready to go.
Totally. The first link I sent is great for the hardware. Let me send you the video where I talked about Apple Log and dialing in the settings for Blackmagic Cam.
And John, while she does that, what about the poor Android users? Can they use this?
Blackmagic Camera is available on the Android as well.
Yes.
Whether I don't know what the connector is on a Android.
It's the same as iPhone, yeah.
It should work the same.
So I want one now.
The whole goal of smartphone videography and what we've been trying to get to over the past decade is your phone looking like a real camera. And they have tried so many different things. Oh, let's add like AI machine learning for depth of field, all of these things. The only thing that has made a difference in the past few years is Apple Log. That is the only way that your footage is not going to look like a smartphone. And unfortunately, nothing that Android has put out like comes close to that. They can add megapixels and all the different features until they're like blue in the face, but it just won't make a difference. And I will say the biggest difference that I think like why Apple pushes the limits with this stuff is they shoot their own events on their own phone. And I think that's why the ProDock is so interesting is like, I'm sure Apple has had these issues on set shooting their events. Hey, we need time code. Hey, we need Genlock. We need a dock that has, enables us to put all of our different accessories, into our iPhone.
I did lie, and you're right. The problem, it does not work. It does probably plug in to the Android phone, but I don't know what features it provides. The big thing is iPhone came out and the 17 came out with the Pro version that really has a lot of the support and is fast enough to be able to do all this stuff. So I don't know if the ProDock will work with Android, and it's a combination of that, but it's the 17 particularly came out with this particular high-powered kind of camera.
If you would like a guinea pig for Android, you're welcome to send me one, and I will let you know.
I'll see if I can loan you one, and you can try it. But I will. You can't blame me if your phone blows up.
Yeah. Well, then I have to get a new phone. So whatever,
The 2 big step changes happened on iPhone 15. That's when they introduced Apple Log, and then iPhone 17. The biggest difference was the better chip and a lot of the better like battery they added the vapor chamber and stuff. That's where they added RAW. They enabled RAW recording. So if you have an iPhone 15 or 16, you're still going to be able to use Apple Log. The only thing that you won't have that iPhone 17 has is the ability to record ProRes RAW with the open gate. But I think Blackmagic actually just released the ability to record open gate without RAW now.
I don't even know that.
Yeah. With the release of iPhone 17, for a while, you were only able to record open gate in ProRes RAW, but I think now you can record in the normal H.265.
Each open gate just means it's using all of the sensor.
So you get more vertical real estate.
Yeah.
And that's helpful when shooting both horizontal and vertical content.
Do you ever use lenses on your iPhone? And if you do, what do you recommend?
Never. The moment I put a lens on my iPhone, I'm just going to use a real camera.
Thank you, Sarah and John.